All right, I'm putting you closest to me.
Thank you.
Yeah, because I trust you the least. All right. Good. Okay, well, guys, I want you to first. Are you hot?
It's hot.
Okay.
And I don't necessarily trust Larry either sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm going to move over a little bit, okay? Is that okay?
Yeah. Good plan, Doug. Good plan. All right, so I want you guys to first introduce yourself just briefly, how long you've been doing, and how long you've been with the county assessor, which county you're here representing, and you know, probably not what your kindergarten teacher's name was, but you know, give us.
I just saw the sign outside and came in.
Oh, good, good. I love that.
I've been in the assessor's office for about 20 years. I've been the elected assessor. This will be my 8th year. I'm running for re-election, and I've previously been involved in private business. I was a consultant with some different companies trying to reduce the size and scope of government. I've worked in the governor's office. I've worked in the lieutenant governor's office, and I've also been involved in neighborhood associations and other things, trying to make great communities, because great communities make great cities, and great cities attract more people, and and it's a good thing for everybody.
I love that.
And I'm a recovering journalist, so pray for me.
That was very good, Larry. I learned a lot of stuff about Larry I didn't know about. I know Larry likes to talk a lot, so y'all are going to learn that here coming up. So, I'm Doug Warr, the Cleveland County Assessor. I've been in that position since January 1 of 2017. I've actually been in this profession about 35 years. I actually worked at Oklahoma County 3 or 4 years. Do you know that, Larry?
Yeah, we got rid of him though.
I know. Well, hey, I had to move up. I upgraded. How's that?
Yeah,
Well, this is gonna be
the
comedy hour, I'm
the best
afraid.
part was we avoided any indictments, so.
I don't even know what to say to that. So I've been in this profession quite a while. I worked at Oklahoma County a few years, and I worked at Cleveland County for a while, and then I decided I wanted to do something else for a while, and so I actually went to Oklahoma State University and taught out of the College of Engineering for about 17 years. And we did training for county officers, you know, not just assessors, but treasurers, even sheriffs a little bit. We trained for cities, municipalities, things like that. I did that for a while, then Cleveland County recruited me back. And I'd spent a lot of my time training county assessors across the state. At one time, every county assessor, whether the elected official or any of their deputies, employees, they had all had some training under me. So I don't know if they did a good job or not, but I hope so. So I influenced
I can
them.
attest that it was great. He's one of the great teachers for assessment practices, and he's trained. He's got his hands on everybody that's important, and has done a great job in assessors across the state. He's terrific.
I love that.
Wow, thank you, Larry.
You bet.
Now I owe him a favor. So that's a little bit about me. I'm involved with we have an international association of assessing officers. It's worldwide, about 8,500 members. I sit on their board of directors. We actually have standards that we develop for people in me and Larry's profession that give guidelines to assessors around the world, best practices of what to do, how to do it, etc. So I was the president of the county assessors. We have an Oklahoma Association, president of that last year, and I actually enjoy getting to speak with people like this. I always tell everybody, any group that I go to, there's some people in here, me and Larry are going to save you some money, because there's things you don't know about that can help you with your property taxes.
Yeah.
So nobody likes them. Do you like property taxes, Larry?
No, but I enjoy the blessing of being able to have a house to live in.
Yes.
And I enjoy the possibility of turning on the electricity, and there's electricity, and there's water to drink when I turn on a faucet, and I can get rid of my bad stuff through a sewage system. So I appreciate all the things that the property tax pays for.
So, well, I will say that is true, but most people, how many people in here actually get a tax bill, actually pay real estate taxes or personal on your, a lot of people do. Well, nobody likes to get that bill. At least I don't like the bill. I like the services, but most people have no clue how that bill actually comes about. I owe $500 or $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000. Nobody really knows. How do you come up with that amount? And that's why I felt honored and fantastic that Becky invited us here today. when anything your profession you've been in or anything you do, the more you know, the more knowledge you get about it, the better you can do at that. So we're here to help you. And like I said, we're going to save some people money in here.
Yeah, no, I agree. And this is such an important conversation. And I'm pretty good at picking things that people don't like and talking about them. But it's my favorite thing to really get the information out there so people can make good decisions and at least understand the implications. So, and before we get started, I failed you on one part. I want to remind you, if you're new, we take questions at the end. If I were to take them in the middle, it'd be popcorn and I wouldn't be able to rein it back in. So what we're going to do is take questions at the end. You have a note page in front of you. If they say something that you think, well, wait a minute, I have a question about that, please jot it down, and then at the end I've got some mic runners and we'll answer those questions at that time. Cool? Good? Okay. So one of the things that I like to do as we get started, guys, is to make sure that we're all operating from the same base foundation understanding. So Doug, why don't you explain to us what is the purpose of the County Assessor's Office, and what do you do and what do you not do?
Okay, well, as Larry's kind of hinted at, the first thing we do is we don't do taxes. Everybody associates us with taxes, but in reality, the county assessor's office, some of the main things that we do, we have to discover, which we discover if it's, whether it's vacant land or you have a home built on the land or you've got shops or, you know, maybe you got a pool in the back. We have to discover, and this applies for residential property and commercial and industrial. We have to go out and find all the Walmarts. We got to figure out how big the stores are. Do they have gas pumps there? We value the real estate part, but we also, if you're thinking of Walmart, they actually have to turn in inventory, how much inventory they have on hand, all the shelving, the registers, computers. This applies to every business. So we actually have to go out and inspect that, collect that data. Then we call it discover, and then we say list, which we have to track all that, who owns it. And then the last part, we appraise all real and personal property. So real estate is tangible things, fixed things. You know, I built a house, it doesn't move, I can touch it, feel it, see it. And then we also value, not on the homes, you used to have to pay, how many people remember we used to have to pay a household property tax? You had to pay on the things inside your home. We abolished that, I don't know, probably what, 20 years ago or so. So you used to have to pay on that. There's a lot of legislation that we go to. This was one thing we wanted to get rid of. People paid on everything inside the house. We didn't want to pay for it anymore. So we got the legislators, we got them to vote that out. So, but businesses still have to render their assets, their personal property inside that. And then if you've got, if anybody in a farming operation, tractors have to be rendered, but we have to value all that. So that kind of what we do in a really short few words. But the one thing Larry said, we don't do taxes. They call us the tax person, tax man, tax assessor, tax guy. We're actually, our true title is county assessor. And that's the key, the word assessor. Now some of you may start spelling assessor and it says A-S-S and you stop. But it actually goes on, there's E-S-S-O-R. But assessor means we actually are in the valuation business. We value all these assets. As we go forward, we're going to get into, you all affect your taxes quite a bit. So that's kind of what we do in a nutshell. I don't know, Larry wants to add something to that.
Yeah, I can see him bouncing up and down wanting to add to that.
The other issue is that you get one property tax bill in your county. In Oklahoma County, there's 19 cities and towns. There's 19 school districts in the county. Every one of those school districts, every one of those communities has the ability to raise taxes through a millage vote. But they don't send out a bill. Oklahoma City raises $2.7 billion in general obligation bonds. They don't send out a bill, because if they did, they'd get the phone calls. So all of us take all of those millage rates in the assessor's office and we associate how much of that millage is going to be associated with the value of your property to pay it back. And we have dozens, hundreds of districts for schools, cities, municipalities, technology centers, state colleges. All of those are all different in our county. And I'm the guy, along with a great staff, that has to associate your obligation of all of those bonds that you voted on and passed with a 60% vote. I have to make sure you pay your fair share, no more, no less. And the legislature passes extremely stringent laws that I have to follow to make sure that you only pay what you owe. But you don't pay it to me. I don't care if you pay your taxes. The treasurer's office does. But that's why property taxes are so misunderstood, and I have a document about misunderstanding property tax. I mean, they sit on their ends at these large cities and communities, and they get a check.
Well, and one of the things that we're going to talk about shortly is misconceptions. So I'm excited to hear about that. Did you bring extra of those at your table, or is that the only one you have?
I've got a few. You can make copies if you like.
Yeah, okay, so we'll get it. If anybody wants one of these, you can write it on your feedback form, and we'll try and get that to you. Amy loves it when I do that to her. So let's talk first. Okay, so I do know, so you're Cleveland and you're Oklahoma. I do know that we have other counties represented in the room. I know we've got some Grady. I think we've got some Pot County in here, and probably some Canadian. So, so for them, so that they don't zone out, from county to county, is it hugely different? Or is it pretty much the same? I know Doug and I talked about this. Do you want to take that?
Yeah, I'll touch on that. Excuse me. Well, there's different county boundaries. Cleveland County starts at 89th Street, South 89th Street in Oklahoma City. We go, the river kind of follows our west boundary. We go to Moore, Norman, Noble, Lexington. Anybody here from Lexington today? Okay, we go all the way down that. We all have different borders, but every county, everything we do in our office is based on Oklahoma Constitution or statutory laws. So every county should be basically doing the same thing. Counties may do it a little bit different, but all the same laws apply to us.
Perfect. That's what I wanted. I didn't want anyone to feel like this conversation might not apply to them.
When you're looking at, there's a disparity between large counties and small counties, with Cleveland County, Oklahoma County, Tulsa County, Garfield County, Comanche County, a couple of others. You're talking about more than 50% of the value of the state of Oklahoma. Oklahoma County, 720 square miles, which is a big square, and 89th starts it. I had to get permission to come past south of 89th. And I'll get a vaccination and sprinkled when I go back. But, we've got a county, it's worth $109 billion. That's huge. But because of all the strictness that's done through the statutes, it sounds great, it's very impressive, but that's not what we're collecting. And when you see your bills that you get, and it says your assessment's gone up $40,000, that doesn't mean you're paying $40,000 more in property taxes, and that's part of the whole misunderstanding of this whole process that we do.
Yep, nope. Okay, perfect. All right. So, as you know, I run a real estate group here in Oklahoma City, and we get a lot of questions about property taxes, a lot of complaints about property taxes, things like that. So I want to talk, and a lot of the information that I get is not necessarily correct. So I want to talk about some misconceptions, and then after we talk about misconceptions, then we're going to talk about how that money is actually divided up, and then we'll discuss the exemptions and maybe try and save you guys some money. So first we're going to talk about some misconceptions. Larry, you were telling me about an example not very long ago where you said somebody got their panties real in a wad about their property taxes went up $40,000. So tell us that story, and tell us how you walk through that.
Well, when someone is unfamiliar with the process, I can have people that are building houses, and because it's not the first of the year when the house is complete, and I had this last week. I mean, the gentleman was complaining about his neighbor. He said he's only got a property tax bill of based on a value of $90,000. And he says, my house is worth $1.5 million. Why am I getting cheated? Well, the truth was that it was not a house for us because it wasn't after January 1st and somebody living in it. That person's going to get a bill that's going to be based on its value, based on its use. If you can't live in a house, then it's not used as a house, and it doesn't have the same value as a house. So when people are building houses and looking online on the websites that we have that help people try to understand, sometimes it can be very confusing. But the most concerns I get are when someone sees an assessment of value go up dramatically, and with all of the limitations and caps that we have, I've got a perfect example of commercial property. It's gone up precipitously. I mean, it's worth about $800,000, and the gentleman is upset because it's almost doubled. That's what happens in a marketplace that's hot.
Yeah.
And he says, and I'm looking at it, I said, okay, it's worth $700,000, but because of all the limitations, you're only paying property taxes on $289,000 worth of value. Did you know that? Oh, no, I didn't think about that. So if it continues to go up at 5% every year to catch up, you'll be dead, I'll be dead.
Well, not only that, but a lot of times people will look at a house and they'll get online and look at the property taxes to try and figure out, can I afford this? But what they don't think about is if somebody has owned that home for 45 years and their property and we're going to talk about caps here in a little bit, but their property tax has just gone up incrementally, or maybe it's frozen, and so then that limits how much it goes up. Yeah. And then when they purchase that house, it gets reassessed, and that can be a big shock if they don't understand how property taxes work.
Two things can be right at once. I mean, a few years ago we had a meeting here in Norman, and I looked on the sheet on the bulletin board. It said, beautiful 4-bedroom home, 2 baths, 2-car garage. Last year's property taxes were only $600. Yeah, but when you pay $400,000 for it, you're not going to be paying $600 anymore.
Right.
Because the person who owned it qualified for all those exemptions. And that's why we're always trying to please use our calculator that we have on our website. And you can call our office if you're in Oklahoma County or if you're anywhere. You can get the information about what could happen.
I would like to add one thing. Our assessment date is January 1. So we look at what's there as of January 1. If it's a business, what kind of assets they have, or if it's a house. Sometimes you've got new construction. If it's not, they're building a new house. Well, if it's not finished, we don't put on partially complete, whether it's commercial or residential. If a house that somebody's building something new or you're adding on to your house, if it's not finished January 1, well, then we're not going to even put it on that year. It won't go on until the following year. So what's great now, we have websites. Most counties have websites. And there you can look up your property, see how big the square footage. We have sketches on there. You can see, okay, that looks about like my house. How many square feet do I have? It can show if you're qualifying for a homestead exemption, et cetera, which we'll talk about exemptions. But those websites, you can look at everything. You can see what your neighbor is, your house, et cetera. We'll always tell you if you see something you think's wrong on your property, call us, because Larry's got about, how many parcels?
337,000 parcels.
That's actual individual real estate parcels. Cleveland County's about 115,000. That's a lot of moving parts to keep everything accurate. We always plead to you all, if you see something wrong, let us know, because we want everything to be as accurate as possible. But a lot of times when you're comparing different people, we'll get into constitutional limitations, where it used to be the assessors, we kept one set of books. Everybody paid on market value. Well, now we've got some cap things or limitations where not everybody pays at the same level. So it's saving some people money, but if you buy a new home, somebody's else where they're getting a limitation comes off and people start paying at this. Then sometimes you'll see a new house and, well, they're only paying on vacant land. Well, that house might not have been done as of January 1.
Yeah. So clearly, when someone says my taxes went up $40,000, that's not true.
Unless they built a brand new addition to their house that was worth $4 million.
And that was the example that you were telling me. You were like, You said that to the guy. You were like, your taxes can't have gone up
Because
$40,000.
we send out documents talking about the appraisal or the assessment of value. And when we do, those documents are strictly required and monitored and managed by the Oklahoma Tax Commission. I think that part of it's on purpose to make it confusing. And I'd like to fix it, but I can't create statutes. I can only talk to legislators and ask them to help. And Doug and I, God bless us, please pray for us. We're dealing with legislators trying to figure out how we can fix things, and it's really hard to be able to explain to legislators what we need to do. And then with the tax commission acting as a buffer, it's extremely complicated.
Yeah, I would say we're going to spend an hour and a half together today, and we're going to see how much knowledge you get. When we go down and just educate legislators, we just give them facts and information, then they do what they want. But a lot of times we only get 15 minutes with them. So just think what you're going to learn here today in an hour and a half versus the people making the laws only going to get 15 minutes with them.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about some resources and some voting and things like that too. Okay, so when websites like Zillow and things like that, and what you guys have on their tax, this is something that I think you and I talked about, Doug. Like, would you ever price your home based on what the county assessor says? Talk to me a little bit about why sometimes that, because I get that question a lot. Well, county assessor has me at this is what I want to ask for my house. And I have to say, well, the county assessor doesn't know that you have 37 cats living in here, right? So, like, what does that look like?
I have 2 cats is enough to keep it. 37 cats is not going to smell good, I can tell you. So, yeah, Zillow, and there's other websites out there that they'll give you an estimate of the value of your property. Sometimes how they do that is they do it all across the United States. They suck data, or they buy our data. They buy Oklahoma counties, Cleveland counties, every county. Well, they buy, everything that we collect is paid by you all, it's paid by the schools. Anybody that actually gets ad valorem dollars pays a little bit of our budgets. So, but this data that we collect, we go out and measure a house, how big is it, or how big Walmart is. Well, since it was collected and organized, et cetera, whatever you want to say, since it was done with actual tax dollars, anybody, even you all, you can buy all that data, and you have to pay like $50 or $100. But like Zillow, they collect all this data, then they put it into something that they call a model. No, it's not. When I was growing up, I did plastic models and this and that, but they're called AVMs, automated valuation models. It's basically they take all this real estate data, and they take sales and different things like that. They put it in these computers and they generate values. So all the data they collect is not always, because I'll tell you, everything that we do every day, we've got things changing on our websites. Well, they only collect that data so often. So sometimes their estimate of values may be good, sometimes they're not. It's nice just to see what they have. Every time I look at my house on there, it's worth more money than it probably is, but hey, I like to see that. So what me and Larry do is everything we do is reported to the State Board of Equalization. And the State Board of Equalization is the governor, lieutenant governor, the state auditor, the top officials. So we have different audits that they check to see we can't overappraise property and we can't underappraise property. We have some very strict audits that make sure we try to appraise things at market. Well, what we try to do is an appraisal is an opinion of value. If everybody in this room, me and Larry got a lot of experience, if we were given the same data looking at sales, what things are selling for in your neighborhood or other neighborhoods, we're all going to come up with a little bit different value. So an appraisal is an opinion of value. So, it's not black and white, it's worth this amount. So in our profession, we look at analyze sales, what the market's doing, et cetera, and we have a little bit of range where we can underappraise properties. So typically, we're going to try to underappraise a little bit and give the benefit of the doubt to the property owners. Hopefully save you all a little money. That's kind of the way we look at it.
We're mass appraisers. I have a friend who calls me and says, you don't understand, my house is worth more than you think it is because I've got imported terrazzo Italian floors. I don't care. He says, what do you mean? I said, I care that you have a floor. He says, but I've got granite countertops. I said, maybe somebody would like to have granite countertops. I don't care. I'm glad you got an operational kitchen because I'm mass appraising. You want to find out how much values in terrazzo floors? Get an appraisal from a realtor or an appraiser, because that's what they're going to do. I'm assessing market value based on January 1, and after that, it's all done for me until next January. And I use all the data that year of transactions and other sales to determine the market value of those properties that have similar characteristics, and the bell rings January 1st. I don't make any more changes. So if you're selling your house now, there's inflation that's going to happen because it's the house buying season. People are going to get out of school, they're going to want to find a new school district maybe, and they're going to use this market, and you're not going to use last year's data from the assessor's office. Maybe you get something from Zillow or Redfin or something like that that gives you an idea, but the real way you're going to get a value determined is to have an appraiser come out and say, all these things make sense, and I think your house is going to be worth that much.
Yeah, the numbers that we provide to people, we typically say about 45 days. And Doug, you said that you pay attention to the way the outside of the house looks and make an assumption.
That's a good point. Well, one, when we do inspections, when we walk around your home, we do that once every 4 years, unless you added something on. We get building permits and things like that. Some people add on, some stuff people tear stuff down. We try to keep our records as accurate as possible. But we go around the exterior, so we don't go on the interior. So, as I was telling Becky, so don't mow your yard. Don't necessarily paint everything. You can have you want shower fixtures made out of gold or whatever you want, all this fancy tile Larry's talking about. But we're not going to know about that. So we look around on the exterior, and we look at the quality of construction. Well, we also look at how the home's being maintained. Some people maintain their house like it's brand new homes are brand new, but as a home ages, there's things that need to get fixed. A little paint here, maybe a screen gets torn, or under your porch, something. I've got squirrels in my neighborhood. Who likes squirrels around their houses? Did you know this was going to come up, Becky, about squirrels?
I had no idea.
Okay.
It's a surprise every time.
Well, squirrels, they love to, if they can, they're going to get in your attics, but they like to chew on some of the trim under your porches and stuff. Well, they've been chewing lately. So, sometimes you got to replace the trim board or something like that. So we don't look at the interior. And another thing, so we look at the exterior, affects your value. We also follow typically we're a year behind the market. So Zillow is probably going to be more up to date. Like Larry said, we only look at the market, what it was as of January 1. Well, typically in Oklahoma, the market's going up. Well, Zillow may be keeping going up, but so when we value your properties again, we're going to be catching up from 1 year ago.
And it's important to remember, too, when we're looking at why we determine January 1, we send out all of the bills from the treasurer's office, not the assessor's office, and when the treasurer collects all that money, we're going to be able to only spend what we have. We're a balanced budget county. When you hear these horror stories from other states where they say, oh my gosh, property taxes doubled in Florida, what's the system down there? Because there's only 50 states and there's probably 80 different taxing systems. Because you've got a city or a town like Dade County and they say, gosh, we just had a hurricane, we lost 500 houses. What are we going to need next year to fund all the services that we provide? And you've got all these houses that are no longer paying property taxes, but they're going to have to raise the millage rate without a vote of the people, and we have to have a vote of the people on a millage rate in Oklahoma. They're going to say, we need to have a millage rate up to here to replace all that lost revenue and fund the government services that are demanded by the public. So they unilaterally decide that's the new millage rate. And that's when you're going to be shocked, if you live in Florida in that town, when you're going to have a doubling of property taxes because they can. We can't do that here. We're stuck in a balanced budget. And with the amount of money that we have, we will only spend what we have. So the other stories, there's reporters all the time that try to localize a national story, say, how come, what's happening in Florida, is that going to happen here? No, it's not.
I'm so glad you touched on that too, because I know that the news has become such a marketing animal, and so a lot of times they'll pick something that is clickbait for more, and so it's good for us to know that pay attention to where they're talking about. And it's almost like you were looking at my notes, because next I want to talk about because I think people want to know where their dollars are going. So I love this dollar. Did we put this on the tables? Do you have a diagram of a dollar?
No.
Okay.
Okay. I've got some other sheets, and
Okay.
I should have brought more, and I
Perfect.
apologize. But
Okay.
This is the dollar bill, and we talk about all of those millage rates. How many people have been through a leadership class? Anybody? Okay. What do they say? Cities work on sales tax. Counties work on property tax. Bull. I've got more property taxes going to cities and towns in Oklahoma County than we get for the county to operate all of our services. And remember, we don't have a luxury about saying, gosh, wouldn't it be great to have a new arena? That'd be great. No, we don't have the luxury of doing that at the county. We have the constitutional responsibilities of access to the courts, secure county records, assessments, collections to a treasurer, all those county clerk records and court records, and running the jail. Only the jail in every county is a constitutional requirement. It's not a kind of sort of maybe. And if you don't fund your jail, and we just went through a whole excursion of trying to balance the budget over there, and they've got expenses. So you're looking at all of the funds that we spend out of that measly 9.1 cents in Oklahoma County. But when you get your bill in Oklahoma County, you think, oh my God, look at all those property taxes they're collecting. How come they can't run government and balance it with a jail and fund a jail and build a jail and do all those things? Because we're not getting the money. In the last 24 years, we've had more than $200 million diverted from the county to cities and towns and other efforts in the county that took money away from us that we would have been able to use to build a jail.
So let's look at our dollar bill.
Yep.
And it says that 58.56% goes to schools.
Right.
13.42% goes to career techs and state colleges, like we're sitting in right now.
Yep.
So thank you, Moore Norman. 9.17, the county, like you were talking about. 9.4 to cities and towns. The libraries, 4.25. City, county health departments, 2.11, and then we've got all these little ones for
tax increment financing
3%.
districts divert property taxes away from the county. We are not reimbursed for those. The state reimburses the schools for the revenue that is lost through a tax increment financing district, but we don't get reimbursed. So my concern, and I think Doug shares the concern, cities and towns can create these economic development groups like they do at the University of Oklahoma, but nobody does a fiscal impact study. How much money will be obligated by the creation of a tax increment financing district that will have to be reimbursed by the state? In California, they did this. They were using this to attract new businesses, and it became so expensive that California ended tax increment financing districts because it was a $3 billion to $4 billion off the top expense for the state of California. These things are growing. They last 25 years. We don't know exactly what the total financial impact is, and neither does the state that has to reimburse for those. And we're always talking about better fiscal accountability at the state level, especially having to do with assessments and property taxes.
Well, let's talk about, so the biggest piece on here is school. So Doug, if somebody said to you, I don't have kids in school here. I haven't ever had kids in school here. Why is so much of my money going towards the school district?
Well, that is a question we get all the time. A lot of people have had kids in school or they didn't have kids in school. The only thing we can say, which not everybody likes, but somebody had to pay for you when you went to school. Some people have a lot of kids that go, some none. It's not a perfect system. we answer that, try to explain it to you. It's kind of like a lot of times y'all control your own taxes a little bit when you vote on bond issues and things like that. You know, it's going to, the one deal, if you do vote in a bond issue, excuse me, whatever you vote in, it's the local community voting in. Like in Moore, around in Moore, when we had a tornado in 13, there was some children got killed. So the city of Moore, the people in that area, that school district, they voted in to put safe room storm shelters in there. So the community votes in those bond issues. So the community has to pay for it, but those funds stay right in whatever that issue was. So but I always ask, when a bond issue, I tell somebody where your taxes going up a little bit because of that bond. Has anybody in here ever voted for a bond issue? Nobody that ever calls me says, I never voted. So it's kind of like the school kid thing. Unfortunately, when tax dollars are paid in, you don't use every one of those services. They go to a lot of services. Most of them, you know, probably 2/3, 3/4 go to schools, career techs, things like that. But we don't always use every dollar. But as a community, in theory, we should help everybody else. And that's kind of why they're broken up a lot of different ways.
How would you answer that question?
When someone calls and says that to me, and they say that, let's say they live in Edmond School District, and they say, I don't have kids in the schools. I said, okay, but when you sell your house, the first thing you're going to say is beautiful home and X number of dollars. And what's the second thing? Edmond schools. So you don't want to pay for something that you're going to market your house, which has more value to someone because they're in a particular school district. The other thing is, what do you think happens to property tax dollars? If you ask the legislature, apparently we take them all and put it in a burn barrel and set it on fire. It does absolutely nothing. What happens when you have a wellness check for grandma? Who do you call? The sheriff's office. The sheriff's office doesn't say, oh, you know, well, they ended property taxes, so that wellness check, we can schedule that for next week, it'll be $1,000. When you want to have your trash picked up, you don't have a trash barrel to burn. You don't have to create your own electricity. You don't have to create your own solar system. There's a franchise in your city. And I love what Governor DeSantis says. He says that I bought a big screen TV. I paid sales tax. I shouldn't have to pay sales tax every year. But every year I'm only renting my house because of property taxes. Governor, if you have a big screen TV and you don't have electricity, you just have a very large wall hanging. So when you're talking about the services that you get, you wouldn't have access to courts, you couldn't sue people, you couldn't protect yourself from lawsuits, you wouldn't have secure records on your property so somebody doesn't come in and say, you know, I'd like to own Kevin Durant's old house, would you mind changing the deed? Those are all either constitutional required services or statutorily required services. There's not an if or a but. Those are things that we have to do. County commissioners have to do their work, and it's based on a fractional teeny amount. It's not a property tax, it's a fee for services that you expect to have. And that's what we do to make sure that that money's available.
So that talks a little bit about, so I have a question on here about everybody's talking about no more property taxes, and I think we could maybe get on a little bit of a rant about that, and I'd like to not. But what I would like...
You probably want me to answer that question, not Larry.
But what I would like to do is just, what I do want is for people to maybe be able to see things from both sides. And so maybe if Doug, you could just give me maybe a pros and cons to just the Reader's Digest version, the pros and cons, and then I promise these guys will hang around for just a minute afterwards if you have a heated debate, and then I'll grab my photographer and have them put that on YouTube for me. But
So there's a lot of misconceptions. Like I said, I serve on an international board. I work with people around the world that are involved in property taxes, and 30 years ago, one, we have term limits in the legislature now. After, 12 years they're gone?
Yep.
Well, you lose a lot of institutional knowledge. So 30 years ago, there was a big question. Taxes were going way up. They're kind of skyrocketing. Seniors were losing their homes, things like that. Well, the legislature, at that time, there's 3 state questions. Some of you all may have voted for those in 96. They started in 97. Well, a couple of things they did is they created a cap at that time, or a constitutional limitation that before, and the best example I use is COVID. Everybody pretty knows the market went up in COVID. Whatever your house was worth before COVID started, afterwards it probably went up 35%.
Now, I'm telling you, the best time to buy a house was 2019.
I know, and I luckily bought one right about then.
Yeah.
Thank goodness. I didn't know, of course, that
Nobody
time
knew. Yeah.
you didn't know what the market's going to do. As a realtor, usually the market's just slow up or down. Well, COVID, it went this way. Well, in 96 or 30 years ago when COVID, wasn't around, well, in Oklahoma, it used to be we kept one set of books. What is your market value? If everybody in here lived in the same house on the same block, we could go out and say, well, I owed $1,500 in taxes, or I owed $2,000. Everybody would own the same. Well, now, 30 years ago, they started a cap. Well, if the market went up 35%, it started at 5%. Now we have a 3 and a 5% on homesteaded property right now. Homestead property is where it's the property's in your name, and that's your actual primary residence. That's where you live. You can qualify for homestead. So that, if the market went, let's say 30%, well, I raise your value 30%, and this is statewide, except because of that 3% cap, what you pay taxes on, your taxable value can only go up. Let's say your house was worth $100,000. It's worth 130 now, where you're going to pay off 103,000. It can only go up 3%. So we have some constitutional limitations where it'd take, if the market didn't change, it'd be 10 years before you got to pay on this market value. So other states around the country, they don't have these caps. And so when their markets went up 35%, they're actually paying a lot more. So Oklahoma, our legislators did some good there. They passed that. And they also came up with the senior valuation limitation. It's kind of fancy for what's called a senior freeze. If you qualify for a senior freeze, which, does anybody have that right now in here? I see a couple.
I talked to somebody who just got one. She caught me right before, and she said, I've got it taken care of.
So we passed out something that me and then Chris Apel, raise your hand, Mr. Apel. We developed some simple tax facts. Well, in the middle, it's got a little graph in there. It goes back 15 years, actual stuff in Moore. Well, in Moore, there was a house worth $200,000. Well, today, that house is worth $400,000. Well, if you qualified for that senior valuation or that senior freeze, 15 years later, even though your house is doubled, your taxes are still based off that $200,000 value. You don't even get that 3 or 5% jump. So that gross household income to qualify has to be $99,000 or less. When that originally started, it was $25,000. It's up to $99,000. It's different in different counties, but like Canadian, Oklahoma, Cleveland County, it's different for every county based on the median income. It's a HUD statistic. But these exemptions, we'll probably talk more, they save you money.
Now, I will say also, the thing, when you say that it freezes, their taxes could go up if the millage rate changed. Yeah.
And a good example is in Moore. I talked about the storm shelters the local citizens voted in. Mm-hmm. So 15 years later, if you lived in Moore, excuse me, your taxes are maybe what you were paying, just a little bit more, but that's because the value doesn't change, but this millage rate, to figure taxes, you take a value times a rate. A rate is based on estimate of needs of schools, county, but you also factor in all these bond issues that are passed or could be paid off. So you're locked in paying on that value, but this rate jumps up and down a little bit. So your taxes aren't going to change much, but one year they may go up a few dollars, one day they may go down a few dollars. But the key is if you qualify for the senior freeze, that value is locked brought in. And those are things that the assessors, we promote, and there's some legislature they're trying to pass this year that we do promote, like the homestead. Your homestead, if you have that, your primary resident, you get $1,000 off your assessed value, and we'll just say you get $1,000 off this value. Well, that started back in 1935. The Great Depression happened in 1929. Well, people were financially struggling years and years ago, so the legislator came up with something. Okay, let's give a little bit of exemption. You know, you go back about 100 years ago, you know, a house was probably worth maybe $1,000 or $500, and everybody lived on a farm. It wasn't worth much. So they came up with giving $1,000 exemption on your homestead. Well, that hasn't changed since 35. Larry's been at the Capitol meeting. We've been promoting for years. Well, you need to raise that up. A 100-year-old exemption that hadn't changed is not really benefiting the people that own homes here in the different counties around the state. So there's some good legislation that we help promote, and then some other things that we just need to educate people more so they can, whatever they do, they can make better decisions.
It's really rhetoric versus reality. The rhetoric is we're going to end property taxes. The reality is no, they're not. What they're going to do is they're going to transfer the obligation to people who do not have homesteads or are commercial properties or agricultural properties. In Oklahoma County, the legislature is talking about ending property taxes for homesteads. You're talking about more than 100,000 properties that are homesteads, and I'm sure we'll have a lot of people that may or may not qualify for homesteads, but they'll work out a deal with the property owner to be able to make it seem like they should, which could save a tremendous amount of money for the owners of a lot of rental properties. And the cost, there's always a cost associated with it. In Oklahoma County alone, they're talking about $308 million taken out of schools, technology centers, the county, and then the cities have an obligation. So where do you pay for it? How do you pay for it?
Yeah, I was about to ask, is there a plan for?
No, here's what they tell us. They say, you know, I'm going up to Edmond where I live, and I told the folks up there, I said, Edmond School is going to lose $60 million. Where's the money coming from? And the legislature says, don't worry, all you got to do is go back to your school districts and all to your citizens in your county and say, would you mind passing a tax to replace $300 million? That's the plan from the legislature. It's frightening because Doug and I know this stuff, and we're trying to explain it to a brand new legislator or a term limited legislator who says to us, what are you going to do to replace the $300 million in the county where you live? It's going to impact your schools. And they look across the desk and they say, I don't care. How do you deal with that? Because Doug and I have a real tough job. In Oklahoma County, we're providing more than 82% of the budget for all of those essential services that nobody grabs me by the lapels and says, stop providing a district court, because that would be unconstitutional.
Well, I will say that the resources that we need to talk to our legislators if we're concerned about it, ask some questions, make sure you're getting the information and both sides of the story and all of that. So I will say that the resource, and that I'm always going to be an advocate for voting and talking to those who are public officials and people who are voted in. So one thing that I will say is one thing that I want to talk about with regards to the exemption and the homestead exemption and things like that is that you need, so the January 1st is the key. So if you bought a house in 2025, then you now are, well, no, because the deadline was March 15th. So now you need to wait. So if you apply now, it's going to be applied for 2026.
I'd like to add something on that. With the constitutional limitations, 3% is on homestead property, and if it's rental property or commercial, they can only go up 5%. So in Oklahoma, if your value goes up, whether the market or your taxable value, we send you a change of assessment notice. You get something in the mail that says, here's what your property's worth, and then here's maybe what you're paying on. Excuse me. And around the state, most people are paying on, if your house is worth $100,000, which most homes are worth more than that, that's just easy math. Most people are paying on about 2/3, their taxable value is only 2/3 of the market. So you're getting a lot of breaks in that aspect. So that definitely helps a little bit there. So
the exemptions are senior.
but sorry.
No, you're fine. Hey, no, you're
So
good.
most people get a notice every year that says, okay, here's your market value, but your taxable value is either going up 3 or 5%. So like I said, for COVID, we used to send out notices each year to about half the county. Well, now almost everybody in the county gets a notice. And that notice extends, most times the exemptions you have to file by March 15th, but if you get a notice, whatever the date is on that notice, it extends that period 30 days. If you live in Cleveland County, we haven't sent out our notices. Oklahoma County usually gets them out a little earlier. Ours will go out in a couple weeks, but if you haven't filed for an exemption, this brochure in the middle talks about different exemptions in the middle. On the right side gets into homestead, the senior valuation, etc. And even on the notice, we supported legislation. We don't design the forms that send out, okay, it tells your value's going up. Doesn't tell you if your taxes are necessarily changing, because we don't know yet. But that's later on when they figure that rate. But we help promote some legislation on the back of that form. They've added some, we got the legislators to pass. It tells more about exemptions on that form, which we couldn't control. Well, now it will tell you about these exemptions. And even in Cleveland County this year, we're putting out a 2-page flyer, which I have over on our little booth over here. It's a 2-page thing going out with our notices. It's going to tell you about the exemptions. It's 2 full pages of information about what you may qualify. A lot of people don't know if they have a homestead. The homestead is on your primary residence. You have to have it, had to be in your name by January 1, etc. Well, if you don't know if you have it or not, there's a QR code or a little something on your phone you can click. It'll take you to my website, and you can actually check and see if you do have a homestead. And if you want to call, there's a number on there. You can call and ask us.
Yeah. So as far as the exemptions to look for, homestead, that's the one that the most of the people qualify for. There's also VA for if someone is disabled,
there's
100% disabled.
Yeah, there's 100% for a DAV, disabled veteran. If you're 100% disabled, which comes from the Department of Veterans Affairs, they determine that. If you served in a war or national emergency and you're 100% disabled, you actually pay no property on your homesteaded property. You actually pay no taxes. Yep. That's for the veterans that served, etc. If they had a commercial business, they'd still have to pay on that. But their actual homesteaded property, they pay no individual taxes.
So now does the VA send money for that so that the state has money for that, or that we're not collecting, the state doesn't, or the county, I'm sorry, doesn't get any money whatsoever for that person?
Well, it's any entity, whether it's the schools, the library, health department, the county, no money is funded for that. It's just they get a ticket. It's kind of like the Willy Wonka thing. You get the gold ticket, they get a gold ticket, and they don't pay any property taxes. The state does reimburse us a little bit sometimes for that. But we can't always count that they're going to do that. If it is, it's just like a quarter, excuse me, a quarter of every dollar, something like that. So
I gotcha. Okay. Do you have anything to add to exemptions?
No, I just want to remind everybody about the question nobody's asking that I always get all the time.
Okay, let's hear it.
Okay, we got horse racing, we've got liquor by the drink, we got bingo, we got marijuana, we got all those things. How come we even have to pay property taxes? We get all that money from those things, and it was for the children. So how come we have to pay property taxes when all that money's coming in? Anybody done any analysis on that?
that's a good question, though.
I'm glad I did. Because all of those things, what happens? You get a marijuana industry, all that money coming in from marijuana. Oh, no. No, you get your executive director, you got your deputy director, you got your security director, you got people in cars that are paid for by the state of Oklahoma going all over the place, and they got fuel expenses, they got per diem costs, and after you crank all of that money into the marijuana association, you're going to get 15 cents back. So What happens with this, with horse racing? Golly, all those tribes that do this, that's a $9.3 billion industry in Oklahoma. You know how much we get out of that? About 25 million. So all of these things that we've passed that were designed to help the school children, and part of it goes there, but those are just new expenses and growing the government. And when the government grows on those entities, they're going to use those funds. And then they've got to have a new building or a new office space for all their 25 employees. Then they've got to rent they got to pay parking, all of those things that take away those funds that we thought would help support education. The whole thing, when you're looking at about a $5.7 billion education funding system, and you're talking about the amount of revenue from those things of about $25 million. $25 million is a lot of money. But when you're talking about the entire state of Oklahoma, the 70,000 square miles of Oklahoma, trying to fund every one of those school districts in the state of Oklahoma, and trying to figure out how you can pay for a bus to get someone from Winoka to the school district 3 counties over because you've just got one big school district, the money doesn't stretch that far. And all the schools in the different states that they're talking about too. Education's the #1 funding source for all of the educational things in every one of those states. In Ohio, they're talking about a proposition. They have about a $200 billion budget in Ohio. They're getting a petition to end property taxes. They're trying to get that passed. The governor and others in the legislature are saying you're talking about a $27 billion hole in education funding.
Scary.
No replacement.
So as far as the exemptions go, does the county assessor's office track how many people usually qualify but haven't signed? Like, do you know the ratio of like this percentage of people should be qualifying for homestead but they haven't signed up for it?
I'll say we can't track how many people could qualify. Like I said earlier, I guarantee you there's people in here that qualify. We're going to save somebody money today. Even when we go speak to a group of 10 people, there's some people that qualify. So that's why we went to legislature. On the notice you get, it's going to have exemptions. Cleveland County's had another little flyer in there. We put it on our websites. Me and Larry and all the different assessors, we speak at different groups. We speak at realtor groups. We speak, me and Chris have spoken in front of superintendents, school people, remind everybody, let people know there's ways to save money. So we don't know a percentage, but we know there's a lot of people that don't qualify. That do qualify, they just don't. And since you're a broker, realtor, etc., we always get when we speak with the Realtors Association, and on the table over here, I've got Shannon, raise your hand, and Jennifer up here that work for my office. Raise your hand, Jennifer. I'll come down there. You know I will, and they know I will. We've got forms over there for exemptions. Just forms that if you want to pick up one, learn a little bit about what you have to fill out.
Can you list the exemptions for us?
Pardon me?
Can you list the different exemptions for us?
Yeah, the main one is the homestead exemption. There is a double homestead. If you're the homestead exemption, there's no income limit. You just live your primary residence. Like I said, it's in the tax fact sheet we have. It's your primary residence, deed has to be filed. All you have to do is be living there. Once you file for it, as long as you live in that home, you don't have to file again. But we do, when we visit with realtors, we try to, when you're closing, buying a house, there's a ton of documents. We like you to include some of those forms in there to help them, okay, you need to fill this out. It's going to save you some money. Because a lot of people say, well, I thought my husband filled that. I thought my wife filled that out. Or whatever. So another one is the double homestead. You get another 1,000 off your assessed value. It's based on an income limitation, which right now is, how much is that? 30,000. That's another point. 30,000 for your household, gross household income, anybody living there. Well, 30,000 is not much for, especially if it's 2 people. We finally got that raised through the legislature the last couple of years. It was at 20 for, I don't know, 50 years. We finally got it up to 30. We couldn't get any higher. So a double homestead exemption, there's the senior valuation freeze we said, in the majority of the counties, it's different each one, but the major counties right here, the little bit larger ones, it's 99,000 or less. That way you basically get your value frozen, your taxable value, even though the millage will go a little bit. The DAV, the veterans one we talked about, those are some of the major ones. And there's some for people live in mobile homes, you're leasing on somebody's land, you're leasing it, you can qualify for a $2,000 exemption on that. It's on the forms that we have over there. Talk about that a little bit. So those are some of the major ones.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Do you have anything to add about exemptions before we?
No, I just want to let you know that I've talked to smart people, and I ask them, I said, they say, I don't like my property tax. I said, I'll look up online and I'll find it. And I'll look and I'll say, you don't have a homestead exemption. And they'll say, what's that? I mean, these are smart people. And I say, well, it's a way to save money. They said, but I don't have a farm.
So that's a misconception.
Homestead. No, I don't own a ranch. So I think that we really need to update the term, primary residence exemption or something like that.
That's true.
But and then I said, she said, well, what does that do for me? I said, well, it protects your house if you're sued.
No,
it protects your house from being taken away. And I said, it'll save you about $127 based on your millage rate.
Yep.
And then she looked at me and said, $127? That'll feed my teenagers for a weekend.
Well,
It's not much, but it's important to protect your property.
yeah.
It's important because you get the 3% cap.
Yep.
As the market goes up, if you're capped at 3% versus 5%, just think the difference every year.
Yeah.
3%, if the market went up 30%, it's going to take you 10 years. How many years at 5%? It's going to get there in 6 years.
Give you an
So
example.
that's where it really saves you. Even though you want your home to be worth, and we're going to value the homes at market value, but this restricts that taxable value, what you pay on. So that's that's a big benefit right there.
All of those exemptions this year in Oklahoma, you got the legislators talking about property tax cuts. All of those exemptions and plans that are restricting the growth of property taxes are saving every property owner in the state more than $400 million, or $1.7 billion this year. In Oklahoma County alone, the property owners are saving $400 million in reduced property taxes because of all the exemptions and restrictions. And the legislators are saying that everybody they knock on their doors during their campaign season says, you've got to fix my property taxes. How many people are paying 4 times their property taxes for their home insurance? Raise your hand.
Yeah.
The property taxes aren't your problem. The problem is it all comes in one bill. And your insurance is oftentimes included in your mortgage rate. And if you haven't checked with your insurance company, I didn't do your insurance. All I'm doing is complying with the statutory requirements on limiting your obligation as much as possible. Insurance rates are going crazy, and it would be really great if the legislature would address that, but a lot of legislators are insurance agents.
Well, so next we're going to do, because I want to take Q&A. I know everybody has some really good questions, so I want to do Q&A, but before we do that, I want to do a rapid fire. Okay, you promise? Okay. All right. If someone believes their value is wrong, what should they do? Larry?
Contact the assessor's office as soon as you get your notification.
Good job.
You can start it on telephone, email, or in person.
Perfect. What are the top 2 things, you each get 2 things that people should do after today? What do you think?
Well, number one, see if you have homestead exemption. And that's the plight. It doesn't matter what county you're from. Like, I've got a form over there you can look at, get on the website. If you can't get on the county's website, just call. And that would be the number one thing. And the number 2 is check. Every county has a record on you as far as how big your house is, square footage. You may have a front porch, back porch. You might have an old barn on the property. It's been torn down. Well, get on the county assessor's office website, check that record, and see if the things are accurate. See if the square footage on your house is right.
Yeah, I sold a house up in Quail Creek, and we've got it under contract based on the county assessor. Those houses up there are kind of bananas. I mean, they just are. They're cool. They're very, very cool, but they're very unique. And they had an atrium in the middle. They had been paying 500 extra square feet because the county assessor did the outside. And so that would have been, and they've been doing that for probably 20 years, paying for 500 more square feet than their house actually was. So yeah, if you think your square footage is wrong, you need to call.
Yeah, if a square foot is worth $200 a foot, 100 square feet is what, $20,000?
It was
So
pretty substantial.
if you see your square footage looks low, you don't need to call us. Let it slide. But when you're ready to sell it with Becky or somebody, you want to get it bumped. If you see it's wrong, you want to get it bumped up. And a lot of the realtors, they don't. When your house, you put it up for sale, they're not. Becky's not going to send an appraiser out. Well, I got to measure it and find out how big it is. They use our records, so that's why I say check your records. Check your records to make sure they're accurate.
Perfect, good job. What
And
are your two?
if you're a realtor and if there's a discrepancy, don't hire somebody to fix that. I don't care what somebody else
I'm gonna
says.
tell you, hey, don't tell people that secret. That's my secret that you
Sorry,
told me.
sorry.
Because I walk in, I'm like, every other realtor is going to make you pay $150 to get your house measured, but Larry Stein told me that the county does it for free.
That's right, and we can do it pretty quickly because
Telling everybody my
And
secret.
the first thing I do if you live in Oklahoma County is call my office. You're not going to get a Rolodex where you dial 1 or 5 or whatever. You're going to get a real person, and you can ask them. Just say, "Do I have everything that I'm eligible for?"
Yeah.
And we'll help you walk through it. The other thing I want to tell you about is protect your deed. We offer a service in Oklahoma County where you can sign up for your property, and if anybody's tampering with your deed, and it happens, if they're tampering with your deed, you'll get a notification by telephone, email, or text.
So we talked about that at our last seminar. Did anybody just by show of hands, did anybody put that on their deed? Yeah, a couple? More of y'all were supposed to do. Oh, good.
And it's not just for homes, commercial properties too.
Yep.
But- I've got people in new neighborhoods. If there are going to be 500 houses that are going to be built there, you're going to get a lot of notifications because it may involve your property lines. But mostly you're going to get those when somebody's doing something nefarious. So sign that up, and if you can, because it's a great way to keep track of things.
Cleveland County has that, but for Cleveland County, you file for that at the county clerk's office. That's where that's kind of like a register of deeds. That's where if you have file a lien on somebody, or if you want to file the deed to your home, or a mortgage could be filed. So everything's filed at the county clerks. But that's where you can reach out to them. A lot of times you can get online, because that's a big trend now. A county clerk, if I wanted to file a document that I own Larry's home, the county clerk just takes that document. They have to take whatever document. They don't look to see if Larry owns it, I own it, or whoever. That's a trend now. People just go file deeds. I'm going to go file deeds on Larry's house. Says I own it. I'm making that up, but then I go sell it. I'm going to sell it to Becky. But that happens a lot. That's why that's a great point, Larry, to bring this up.
Good job. Well, we almost did okay at rapid fire. We'll do better next time.
We have little tidbits that needs to be touched on.
So important. Okay, so here's what we're going to do now. We're going to take some questions. I've got 2 mic runners. I'm going to go ahead and have my education partners go back to their tables, so they're welcome to go back to their tables. Who has a question first? Raise your hand, and we'll get that taken care of. Any questions?
You want me to run out there?
No.
I'll jump off this.
No.
Too much risk.
We've got one here, Christy. We've got one up here too.
You got to speak
one?
on. You have to speak on the mic. That's the rules.
As a homeowner, we pay property taxes and we pay the millage. Do people who rent ever pay any of that?
Yes, it's the same. So say you live on this, my knee here. This is a rental home, my other knee. If the value's the same, in their taxable value, they pay on all the same millages. So there's not a difference millage rate for commercial versus residential or ag. It's all the same.
But the renter doesn't pay the property tax.
Oftentimes there's
do they?
people who rent properties say you're responsible for the rent, you're also responsible for the property taxes. In Oklahoma County, we had 5 days when there was more than $1 million in cash collected by our treasurer's office because people were renting properties, but they had to pay the property tax and they were paying in cash.
It just depends on the rental agreement. If a year leasing the house from me, sometimes I'm going to say, you pay me $2,000 a month, and I'm going to keep the house up for you and pay the taxes. Or it could be, you're going to pay me $15 a month, but you're going to have to pay the taxes.
Okay,
So somebody's paying the taxes,
gotcha. Christine?
and it's the same rate.
Yeah, I was wondering if you use comps in the neighborhood, because in my neighborhood, it's like $200,000 to $250,000 homes, but some of these sober houses that have moved in the neighborhood sell for $450,000, and if you use that comp, it could affect my.
I don't know, what kind of house is that?
It's called a sober house.
I'm
and
not
they
familiar with that term.
It's a big 4-bedroom house, and you get 8 men, 2 per bedroom, and they live there.
Okay, here's just the way it
and,
happens. There's all sorts of mixed-use neighborhoods. There's a neighborhood up in part of Oklahoma County where they've got some small little 1,500 square foot homes in a part of that neighborhood. Then they've got 4,000 square foot homes in that neighborhood. And then they got 3,500 square foot homes. That's not one neighborhood. That's 3 different neighborhoods. So if they're your houses, residential properties that are around $250,000, that's a neighborhood inside of a neighborhood. If these sober homes are there, they'd be valued differently as well. And I don't even know if they're.
Well, but are you saying they're
Depending on
the
what
same size? Are they the same size and they're just selling for a lot more? That's going to skew
Well, we
your
look-
comps.
It's a money-making.
Right. We look at, well, one, if your home's here, we try to find the closest homes to you, comparables that have sold, and the most similar. Now, there's always anomalies. There could be a house just like yours that was about run down and almost needed to be bulldozed. That's going to sell for a lot less. We're going to kind of discount that sale, and then there's some sales that are way up here. That's where we investigate. We send out sales letters asking what's up, or we send out what did it sell for, et cetera, some of the terms. Well, when you get one, if you got 10 houses that are selling for $250 and one of them for $400,000, there's something different that property. So it's kind of an outlier, and we kind of kick it out. So
It's interesting because we base value on sales, income, or cost. If this home is being used to be producing income, then the market value could change because of its use and its income level.
And if you think the assessors, whatever county you're in, if you think they're weighting that one and it's affecting your value, just call them and tell them, well, this one down here that sold 3 houses from me, there's 8 people living in it and blah, 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 blah. So, the main thing is if you have a question, you think something's wrong, we all have real people that answer the phone. It's not like push 1, push 3. I'm pushing 12 and I finally get to a human. So, no, call our offices. Our offices are always in. We have a lot of people walk-ins. Anything if something's up, you think something's wrong, call, like Larry said, or email, but just let us know. And we'll, like I said, if your footage is wrong, we'll have somebody typically out remeasure your house. Doesn't cost you anything. We always get out there within a week typically.
Oh, yeah, a couple of days.
Yeah. Amy, what you got?
There are a number of exemptions that have income limits when you apply for them. If your income goes up, do you lose any of those exemptions?
Oh, that's a good question.
I'll answer that. Once you qualify, we're not going to be calling you, emailing, did your income go up ever? So if you qualify, we're not ever going to ask you again. Some people, sometimes your income goes this and that way. If you get in there, we're not going to check on that. Let's put it like that.
I
So
love that question. That's a great question.
it is a very good question.
We're
There's
good?
no, on the basic exemption, a lot of people qualify for homestead. There's no income limit on that. You just have to live in the house and own it.
All right, so here's what we're going to do next. Here's your instructions. I have a few announcements. If you'll just hang tight, let me get through your announcements. These guys are going to hang out for just a minute, and so you can corner them, and they'll be at their table. You can corner them and ask them all the hard questions you didn't want to ask in front of everybody. Please do that because they are great guys and they're very knowledgeable. Can we give them a hand?
Thank you all.